Welcome to Season 4 of the Lead with Coffee podcast, where we continue the journey into how you can change the culture in your business and your home through simple leadership practices. Grab a cup of coffee and get ready to join into today's conversation. Welcome back to Lead with Coffee. Today we want to dive into Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. And if you're not familiar with Brene Brown, just Google her. You will find her TED Talk from, 5 years plus, maybe longer ago, that has been watched by 10 million people at this point. And that's not an exaggeration, on vulnerability. And so we watched that with our team. And really, it resonated with a lot of people, and the power of vulnerability in business and just in your personal life. And so today we want to dive into how to dare greatly. And we are in the middle of daring greatly as we are running a small business, launching a new business, with dreams to even have another one with a coffee farm one day. And part of that means that we are willing to have a dream and actually do it, and not just live in the maybe one day I'll get there. Maybe one day I'll buy that new house. Maybe one day I will take that trip or do that adventure or start that business. Daring greatly means that you're going to be vulnerable. You're going to step into it. You're going to share it with others, and they may or may not be in alignment with you. And what happens when you have critics? So we kind of want to go into it. And how do we dare greatly? How do we have courage to step into these new opportunities or a new career or your passion? And how do we handle that critic whose voice seems to be so strong that when you wake up in the morning, you're almost doing it to prove to that person you could, right? And is that the goal when you start something new? It should be for you, not to prove to the critic that you were right in doing what you're doing. So we kind of want to break down some of what Brene talks about, but we've talked about it in previous podcasts, that the Theodore Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena. And it resonated with me years ago, and it resonates with me today. I heard it again this morning on a podcast. So I want to read it to you and then just kind of be transparent about where we are in our life and why this matters. So 1910, Theodore Roosevelt said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he falls, at least fails while daring greatly?" And I love the concept because when you're doing something hard, you're in the arena, you're battling, and you're doing it because there's something on the other side that you're striving for. And when you have naysayers and critics that don't believe in you, just want to be this loud, resounding voice of negativity, it can make you want to just quit, right? It can make you fail. But you're in the arena for a reason, and you have to start to think about who's been in that arena before you, or who's in the arena with you, and that's who you want to lean on.
Yeah, I think, we've heard so many good quotes from Bob Goff, and one of the things that he had said was, when you have those critics, you have the volume dial, and you can turn down the volume of those critics who don't believe in what you're doing, or maybe they believe in it, but they don't want to see you win. So you have to turn the volume down from those people and then turn the volume up for the people that believe in you, the people that support you, the people that are trying to build you up. Because, I think everyone has a dream, but not everyone is willing to step into it. And I don't know why, but, we love Bob Goff, and I just have another quote that came from him is, a lot of times we're saying, for us as believers, is we're waiting on God. We're waiting on God to see if this is the right thing to do. And what Bob said was like, well, sometimes God's just waiting on you to take that first step. And dreaming big is easy, but making it a reality is hard, because you are going to have critics. You're going to have critics that don't believe in dreaming big. You're going to have critics that don't believe in going out of your comfort zone. And you're going to have critics that straight up just want to see you fail.
Yeah. We saw this when we decided to go into business together 5 years ago. I had been in higher education for 15 years and had a really steady job with steady income. And David had been running this business for already 15 plus years with his dad. And when we decided that I was going to step out and come help run this, we had so many people in our inner circle say we were crazy. And how many times did they say to us, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket? It's like, maybe this is the basket I want to put all my eggs in.
Right.
Maybe I'm not afraid to step in the arena and take the risk, because what if in 5 years doing that got us to where we are today, in a new home with new dreams, starting another business, and a family that's stronger than ever. Yet 5 years ago, everyone thought we were going to lose everything, because if the business went under, then we had no income. We had no health insurance. We had no benefits. How can you do a small business together? You're crazy, right? And those voices were strong. But then we had to step back and realize that the voices that were around us had never done what we're doing.
Yep.
They'd never taken risks like we were taking. They were comfortable. They were stable. They had lived a very stable life doing the same thing, maybe in a job that they hated for 20 plus years, to get to the next job of retirement that they got bored with. You know, it just was one of those things where it was like, you felt like you had to prove it to them. But then at the end of the day, when we look back 5 years later, it's like, we did that because we knew God called us to that. And we weren't afraid to step into the arena. And we weren't afraid to silence the critics. And if we failed, then we pivoted. We did something different. We kept focusing on the long term, not what's happening this minute in our lives. And oh my gosh, we're going to lose everything. It was more of like, this is a hard season. How do we get through it?
Right. And, you know, I the one that was speaking the most into us at the time, well, not at the time, but where we heard the strongest voice was God. God telling me first, and then Sarah, that this was the direction that we needed to go in our marriage and for the business to be successful. And it was a big risk, but there was a confidence there. There was a confidence knowing that we can figure this thing out. And we have. Has it been easy? No. And it took a while for us to figure out the right lanes for us to run in this business. But we worked through all of that. And we're stronger. Our marriage is stronger, and the business is strong right now. And because we were willing to take that step. You know, I was reading this morning David and Goliath, and just talking about how Goliath was saying to David, you know, you're just a boy. How can you come and fight me? And he's like, you come, and David's saying, you know, you come to me with your gods, but I'm coming with the God of Israel. And because of that, you will be defeated. And sure enough, everyone knows the story of David and Goliath, this little kid that, you know, took down this 9 foot tall giant who everyone was intimidated by and had this loud voice. And he's like, I don't care. I've taken down a bear and a lion already. I'll take you down too. And that's kind of the veracity that we need to go into these big dreams and stepping into things that people will doubt that we can do.
Yeah, to dare greatly takes courage and vulnerability. To be able to say, I don't know how this is going to end, but I'm going to be courageous. I'm called into it. There's a peace about it. And I'm going to just be bold in my life. I'm not going to live a life that's safe and predictable because that's what someone else wants me to do, because that's all they've done. It's also a way for others to show their own insecurities to you, because maybe they had big dreams that they never chased, right? And it's part of their regret. So make a list and write down whose voice in your life matters the most to you, because you're going to have a lot of critics, especially in the world of social media where everyone can put a comment about whatever they want. Is the resounding voice in your life coming from your Facebook comments or from that person who speaks life into you, who understands you, who you've shared your dreams, your trials, the successes and the failures, and they're still saying, I'm going to walk with you in this because you have a purpose and a calling, and don't quit. Like, don't let that person who's got a comment over here that doesn't even want to put their name down. They're not in the arena. You want to come and make a comment and be a critic, then be bold about it, right? And if you don't really have the understanding of what we're doing, ask questions, but don't just say it's going to fail, right? Because that makes people just start to feel like, well, if everyone thinks I'm going to fail, why am I doing this? It's like, but who called you to this, right? And if God's called you to it, he's going to walk you through it. And that's just part of the process of like, how do I silence the critic? How do I silence the negativity and the voices of those that don't understand what I'm doing, but and also not make that my driver? I'm not doing it to prove it to them. I'm doing it for me.
Right. And on the other hand, there is, it's not that you don't want those people speaking into you. You want to hear it because there's also the opportunity that some of those people might say something that you do have to dig into and you have to figure out. And it might be one of the best things, criticism or advice that you didn't want to hear, but it was that got you to the next step. So I think there's a difference between, and a lot of times you can tell if people are doing it just because they don't want to see you fail, they want to see you fail, or they're jealous, or they are truly, maybe they're not so nice about how they say it, but their meaning is true, and digging into a little bit will help you get to another level.
Yeah, I think it comes from what's their intent.
Yeah.
Right? Is their intent because they've been in the arena before you and they have some wisdom to share with you, and their questions that they're going to ask you are hard, but you need to ponder them? Or they've never done this. They've never launched something like this, and they have a lot of questions, but it's more so of, why would you do this?
Why would you do this? Yeah.
And the negativity around it, and you're wasting your time and you're wasting your money, and shouldn't you go focus on what you're already doing and make that better versus starting something new, right? And so I think that there's this balance that you're in of, again, are they a voice of a person on your list?
Right.
Do you trust their feedback, or have they proven to you in the past to just be negative? And that's not a person that you want to be pouring into you, right? So it's a part of a vulnerability and uncertainty. And who do you want to be vulnerable with? Do you want to be vulnerable with the person that's going to say, hey, I see that you're in this, and is this the best for you? And if you say, yes, it is, and here's why, that they're like, all right, I support you and I'm here for you, versus like, being vulnerable with someone that's just going to tear you down, right?
Right. And it's interesting. The people that knew you, whether it be close family or, distant family or friends that you used to know, could be the ones that are saying, how could you do that? Because they knew you as a kid when you were a different person, or
right.
a teenager, or in their 20s, were like, how could this person ever? But by the way, that was 15, 20 years ago, and I've changed a lot, and I'm a different person at this point, and this is what I do. This is me being bold and being a big dreamer. I'm not who I was 20 years ago. And it's funny, whether it be Facebook or just family reunion or someone you haven't seen in such a long time, they have this image of who you were,
right,
instead of who you are now. And you got to be careful of that.
Yeah.
And be careful on who you let speak into you.
Yeah. I want to dive in more to vulnerability, because when you dare greatly, you really have to be vulnerable. You have to show people that this is something that I want, whether I want to love this person or chase this dream or start this job, here's why I want to do it. And you're almost looking for them to to give you validation, but because you're emotionally exposing yourself to something, right, that you care about. And so when you think about it in your relationships, you're waking up every day and loving someone who may or may not love you back, who, like Brene says, whose safety you can't ensure, but you're still waking up every day and you're saying, I love you, and I'm going to walk into today and hoping you love me too, and that we can stay in the arena together, right? And that's vulnerability. That's part of just saying, like, I'm going to love even though I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And chasing your dreams can be the same way. It's part of saying, like, I have a passion, I have a dream for something, and I really want to step into this, and I'm scared. Right. It's part of being emotional. It's part of just saying out loud, like, this is scary. I don't know. And what's fun is that you have to find a community, again, of people who have been in the arena. So when we talk about the barn, I found this community of people who have started small micro farms on their own, just like we're doing. And when you find that community and you start to show what you're doing, and they start to respond back positively with you of like, oh, I've been there, you're doing a great job, and here's what you have to look forward to, or you start to share pictures and videos with this community, and you're getting affirmation. And the reason you're getting affirmation is because they remember what it was like to start.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what we have to remember, whether we're talking to our kids or we're talking to our peers. You have to remember that everyone started somewhere. And it's hard to be vulnerable and start something new. When you're a leader, it's easy to be at the top with 20 years of experience, looking at the intern going like, I have so much wisdom to impart on you. But you have to remember what it's like to be that intern again,
right.
To just come in and feeling so insecure and so scared and feeling like you're going to fail. And how do we make sure that we pause for a minute as leaders and just go back for a second and go like, I can tell them everything they need to know to be successful, or I can be available for them as they walk through this journey.
Yeah, and by the way, to one of your previous points, when I wake up every day, I do love you more and more, so you don't have to worry about that.
Good.
Yeah, gosh, you do have to be vulnerable. You do have to find like-minded people, and I think we figured that out when we went to Dream Big, where we knew that we wanted something different, and we were following Bob Goff already, but we went to his Dream Big workshop right before the pandemic. And to be in a room with so many like-minded people that had very different dreams, but all big and audacious and like way outside of all of their comfort zones and going for it. And it's such a cool thing to be around those like-minded people that just are not afraid to try things new and fail and try something new again. And so I agree, the group that you found and any niche that you're in, they're there. They're there, and it's good to be around those like-minded people because you might not even have anywhere near that personally.
Yeah. And to be able to just silence those who just want to, again, be a critic. You might find the community that you're looking for. And then there's that person that just wants to keep commenting on your stuff. Don't respond.
Right.
That's what I've been doing. It's like if I'm showing how we're building and what we're doing and people have questions on it and we're communicating back and forth, and then someone wants to know just something random that's just rude, guess what? My power is to not respond and to just let that go, because I don't have to be available to everyone who has a critique about what I'm doing.
And there's trolls on everything.
So I think that's the piece. And yeah, the Dream Big was essential for us to realize that you have to start taking steps towards what you want. There's never going to be this perfect day and this perfect moment where everything aligns and it's like, now I can start the podcast. Now I can start the blog. Now I can start that business. You have to just start. You have to take the steps to walk into it and keep learning and keep growing and keep fighting for something if that's what you want. And we're on season 4, and this podcast has just evolved over the last 2 years. And it's the same thing with the barn. It's the same thing with CBSI. It has to keep evolving. You have to keep learning and growing, finding a community of people that you can be vulnerable with to say, I'm not the expert at this. I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want a safe space to do those things. And that means that I have to be vulnerable and I have to dare greatly.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
Guaranteed. If you're safe and you don't have big failures, it's because you're not stretching yourself, and that's fine, because there are a lot of people that they're comfortable there.
Right.
And great, that's you. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely at all. Everyone's a little bit different, but for us, we want to go big.
Yeah, and Brene talks about that. We judge people in areas where we're vulnerable to shame, especially picking people who are doing worse than we're doing. And if I feel good about my parenting, then I'm not judging other people's parenting. And I feel good about my body, then I'm not judging other people's, appearance. But if I don't feel good about my body, I might be shaming someone else who's doing that new program or that new thing, and not being successful at it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's really a projection of what I'm feeling. And a lot of what you get with your critics is people judging you because of their own insecurities. Maybe they had a big dream and they never chased it, and you are, and that makes them insecure because you're moving ahead in your life and they feel stagnant. And if you listen to our last podcast a couple episodes ago on languishing, they could be languishing, they could be feeling stuck and they don't know what to do with their life, and you're over here creating this whole new dream and getting momentum, and they're not. And so I think it's all about, again, who's the strongest voice? What are you listening to? What's driving you? And what's your intention for doing what you're doing? Is it for you or is it for someone else?
Yeah. It's got to be for you. Well, obviously, it's got to be for you. But if there is a passion that you have, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Mm-hmm. And if there is something that is stirring inside of you, dig into that. Mm-hmm. Figure out why that is, and maybe you thought it was one thing and it's something else, but you got to go after those dreams and finding a safe place to be able to share those dreams with, because maybe your best friend is glass half full naysayer, and you're having a hard time because you spend so much time with that person, but you're afraid to share what you have. Mm-hmm. You got to be you can be vulnerable with them, but maybe the opportunity is to be vulnerable with some other people.
Yeah, and vulnerability also means that people aren't going to get it, and that's okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's you, and you're being emotional and you're sharing. It might take them time to process what you're doing, right? They might be needing to just wait and see because they don't understand it. The other thing that really matters to us, and as I think about the last 3 months as we've been building out the farm, is letting the kids be a part of it, letting them see that I have a dream that I'm chasing, a business I'm creating, and moving through the process, and they're watching it evolve, and they've been hearing this thing for the last 2 years, but now they're seeing us really take action on it and turn it into something, and they're asking questions, and it's like, what are you going to do with all these flowers? Are you going to sell them? It's like, well, we'll see what grows first. Like, first we have to see what grows before we know what we can sell. And isn't that just like the basis of a small business? Like, you're creating something and you're developing something, and you don't know how big it's going to get. You don't know what the demand's going to be for it, but you're stepping into it day by day. You're working through the process. They're watching us fail as I'm killing plants, and they're watching us succeed as things are growing. And I think that it role models for them in their own life that they can have courage. They can have a dream, they can step into it and be vulnerable, and they can fail. and that's going to be okay. And we walked through that recently with one of our kids who was really struggling in school. And rather than just, really harp on him of like, you're failing, I'm just going to take everything away from you and I'm going to do nothing but ground you. We're stepped into really being vulnerable. What's going on? What's a struggle? Can we pull a team of people together at the school that can support you, help you walk through this process? Because, you failed a lot of things over the last semester. And now this semester, he's doing much better because we found a team of people and an action plan to say, like, here's why I'm struggling, and let's help you so that those struggles can turn into successes rather than just you're a failure.
Right.
And I'm not going to invest time in you, right?
Yeah, and I also want to go back to something else you said about the boys watching us build this thing. They're teenagers, so they're not necessarily volunteering to help, but we've voluntold them to be involved in this because it's a big thing. Yeah. And they've all gotten dirty and sweaty and, been involved in some part of this, and they don't necessarily know why or how it's going to affect them, but I guarantee in 10 years, it will make a difference that they were involved in the beginning of this thing, whether they liked it or not. And I think those are the things that you teach your kids of the importance, even when they don't understand it, why it is important to be involved in things. Because as they grow, they will, eventually understand the importance.
Yeah, and as they get older, I like how Brene talks about it, that we're not going to follow our children into the arena and protect them from the naysayers. Like, they get to walk into their own arenas, and they get to go figure out what it's like to go to battle for something they want, whether it's a degree from a certain college or a certain career or an adventure that they're seeking out in their lives. And we're going to be here for them, but we're not going to stop them. You're not going to go, kill Goliath for them. They have to figure out what it looks like to be David in the arena with Goliath, and what are they going to do? Are they going to run, or are they going to stay in there and fight for what they want?
And I think last night was a perfect example with Jacob struggling in baseball. And, I always video his at-bats, and he's, was doing great, and now he's struggling. And I said, send these videos to Coach Tony and reach out to him and work with him. And sure enough, they were on FaceTime last night, kind of going through some things that Tony saw, but I told him I wasn't going to do it for him and I wasn't going to be in the conversation.
Right.
And he jumped in it and he did it, and I encouraged him more, stick with this. He's a coach for a reason. You're struggling on your own. You can't figure it out on your own. These are the things that you have to do as you become a young adult. You have to go after the things that you want to go after, and it's going to require you reaching out to people.
Yeah, what a great example, because he was failing and he had to be vulnerable and courageous and say, I'm struggling and I need help.
Yep. And
can you help me? I don't want to quit. I want you to help me so I can stay in the arena and keep battling for what I'm seeking. And that's, a successful at bat.
Right. And the other thing is, Tony's there. He's just waiting to be asked. And if you have people in your life that are waiting to be asked, step up, ask them, make that phone call, send that email, text, whatever it needs to be. But there are people there that want to help you.
Yeah. And I know it was hard for you because you want to be there and you wanted to be on the call and you wanted to be listening and telling Tony what you saw. But how much more impactful was it for the 16-year-old to not have you do it for him?
Absolutely.
Right. And there's a lot of new things happening, with our kids and, with new driving and new things, and they're going to have new failures. And that's part of it, right? Like we have to allow them to dare greatly, to have courage, to be vulnerable. And just like having childlike faith, you have to have vulnerability as an adult to step into things and dream big. So I hope that this was something that makes you want to go out and seek a little bit more information on vulnerability. It's not something that people care to talk about, but it is one of the number one things that will change your life and your perspective. So we'll put some links in the show note. Brene has a Netflix 1-hour documentary on the whole TED Talk, which is great. You can watch it, highly encourage it, and pick up Daring Greatly.
We appreciate that you decided to hang out and spend some time with us discussing life and leadership. It would mean the world to us if you would share this episode on social media to increase our online presence. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a minute to rate it and review it wherever you listen. Mahalo!